At the base, a strutting officer mocked the older man in plain civilian clothes, called him a lost old veteran, and ordered him escorted out. He didn't know he was the inspecting general arriving a day early. The officer spotted the older man in plain clothes near the command building, looked him up and down, and decided to put him in his place. He'd been swaggering all morning. The dismissive glance at the man's civilian jacket, the loud remark to a junior soldier about old-timers wandering onto a secure base, the small, satisfied smile as he moved to deal with the intruder himself. "You," the officer said, loud enough for the soldiers nearby to hear, "this is a military installation. You're some lost old veteran who clearly doesn't belong here. I don't care what war you think you fought. Sergeant, get this man escorted off the base before he wanders somewhere he shouldn't." The older man just nodded slowly. "A lost old veteran," he said. "That's what I see," the officer said. "Say it again. You don't belong on my base. You're being escorted out. And you'd know who belongs how?" "Because I run things around here," the officer said, puffing up for the soldiers. The older man was plainly dressed, perfectly calm, in an unremarkable civilian jacket, his bearing quiet but somehow steady in a way the loud officer never noticed. He'd arrived on the base without fanfare or escort, exactly the way he'd intended it, parked like anyone, and asked nothing of anyone. He simply watched and listened and took it all in. What the officer didn't know, because he decided everything from civilian clothes and gray hair, was exactly who he was. The man was the inspecting general, arriving a full day ahead of his scheduled visit, deliberately and pointedly out of uniform, precisely so he could see how this base truly ran before anyone had a chance to clean up and put on a show for him. The lost old veteran, the officer, was so eager to have escorted off the base, outranked every single person standing in that yard by a wide margin, and had come specifically to evaluate the leadership and conduct of its officers. The officer had just delivered his own evaluation. That was when the base commander hurried out of the command building, recognized the older man instantly, and snapped to attention. "General," the commander said. He turned to the officer, his voice carrying, "Do you know who this is? This is the inspecting general. He's arrived a day early. I was coming to receive him. You've just called the general a lost old veteran and ordered him escorted off the base." The soldiers nearby went rigid where they stood. The whole yard went dead silent in an instant. The officer's face strained. "That's the general? In civilian? It's information you didn't have," the general said quietly, "before you decided I didn't belong." The officer scrambled, looking for footing. People like him always accelerate. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. I was maintaining security. You weren't in uniform. You can't fault a man for being vigilant about who—" "Vigilance is good," the general said. "Contempt is not. You didn't ask for my identification or escort me politely to be verified. You looked at an older man in plain clothes and decided he was beneath you, and you made a show of humiliating him for your soldiers. I came out of uniform precisely to see how officers on this base treat someone they think has no rank. You answered the question in about 30 seconds. That was when the sergeant the officer had ordered to remove the general spoke up. "Sir," the sergeant said to the general, standing straight. "For the record, I was uncomfortable with the order. The way he speaks to people who he thinks are beneath him, it's a pattern. I should have said so before now." The whole yard stayed silent. "Soldier," the general said to the sergeant, "noted and respected. That took more courage than anything I've seen on this base this morning." He turned back to the officer. "A real leader treats the lowest ranking man and the man he assumes is nobody with exactly the same respect he'd give a superior," the general said, "because that's the only way to know what kind of man he actually is. You just showed everyone, including me, exactly what kind you are." The base commander was already at the general's side, ready to escort him properly, and the officer stood frozen in the yard, his soldiers rigid around him. The sergeant he'd given the order to now standing tall beside the general, he'd tried to throw off the base.